So thank you everyone again for joining us this evening for our virtual rally to raise our voices to protect our air. It's awesome to see so many of you on right now. It looks like we're just about at 50 people, which is really great to see. And my name is Peter Schneider. Like I said, I'm a field organizer with Environment Colorado. And if you aren't familiar, Environment Colorado is a statewide environmental advocacy nonprofit that works to protect clean air, clean water, clean energy, and open spaces. We're part of a larger national federation of state organizations called Environment America and have a presence in 29 states. So tonight we're gathering to rally together in support of something that's really essential for human life, and that is clean air. Over the next 3 days, the Environmental Protection Agency is hearing public testimony over whether to strengthen the federal standards for clean air. As you'll hear from our speakers, the current regulations in place are not sufficient, and a failure to improve the current standards threatens the lives of tens of thousands of Americans. And that's why we're here tonight, to make our voices heard. So in a second, I will pass it over to our speakers. Morgan Folger is an advocate with Environment America, and Dr. Nilu Tumala is a physician at the George Washington University Hospital, and they'll tell us more about the importance of strengthening our clean air standards. They'll be followed by a couple of actions, including a social media storm, and then we'll learn how to submit our own public comments to the EPA. And finally, at the end, we'll take a group photo together, so you'll have a chance to turn on your webcam and hold up your sign that says #CleanAir or I want clean air. And if you haven't made one already, just grab a piece of paper, write down #CleanAir. It's that simple. We'll do that at the end. And with all of that, I'd like to introduce our first speaker. So Morgan Folger is the director of Environment America's Clean Car Communities Campaign, which is a campaign to ensure that all new cars and trucks are electric by 2035. Prior to that, she helped run a campaign to keep Maryland in the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, or RGGI, which is a really essential coalition to maintain the continued reduction of greenhouse gas emissions in states from Virginia all the way up to Maine. Morgan, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Peter. So yes, I'm Morgan Folger. I'm an advocate on Environment America's Global Warming Solutions team. And I mostly focus on clean cars and getting more electric vehicles on the road. But I've also worked on various issues to protect our climate and our health. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about the landscape at the federal level. The Environmental Protection Agency, or EPA, has made a series of bad decisions that will lead to more air pollution and to more global warming pollution, threatening our climate and our health. So in addition to the standards that we're going to talk about later today, the EPA is also finalizing a series of other rollbacks, even during a global pandemic. So one of the first things that EPA did was finalize the rollback of our federal clean car standards. These are standards that help to reduce pollution from our cars and trucks and make them more efficient and better for our planet. And the weaker standards that EPA is implementing would mean an additional 900 million tons of global warming pollution in our atmosphere. So it's no small feat, and we are actively working to push back against this and are considering legal action as well, because what they're deciding to do is unlawful. In addition to rolling back our federal clean car standards, EPA has also released a policy that suspends the enforcement of our nation's environmental laws under the Clean Air Act and the Clean Water Act during the COVID-19 pandemic. So essentially they're saying that it is okay for polluters to not monitor or report their pollution because we're in a pandemic, but that is not okay, and it could result in millions of pounds of air pollution released from oil refineries. Toxic fracking waste could get dumped into our waterways, and it could increase pollution-related health problems for folks who live in communities close to these toxic sites. And so when our healthcare system is already overwhelmed by COVID-19, we need to make sure now more than ever that polluting industries are held accountable and not releasing pollution unchecked into our environment and our communities. And then another action that EPA has taken over the past couple of months is repealing and replacing the Clean Power Plan with their Affordable Clean Energy Rule, which will sharply increase global warming pollution and is letting power plants off the hook. So through all of these different moves, the Environmental Protection Agency is not following their mission of protecting the environment and protecting human health. And it's going to impact global warming. We already know that global warming presents an existential threat to life as we know it. From longer burning wildfires to intense downpours and increased flooding, the impacts of climate change can in our communities. Climate change has also begun to affect our air quality, and air pollution will become a greater problem as climate change further warms our planet, because it can alter weather patterns and trigger other shifts that will make our pollution problems worse. So we know that we need stronger federal action to combat climate change. We're calling on EPA to enforce the Clean Air Act and Clean Water Act protections, to clean up our power plants and our cars. Our future must be one of climate solutions, including electric cars, energy efficiency measures, clean renewable energy, and clean air. And so I'm glad to have all of you here tonight to speak up for one of our important federal regulations. So we are calling for stronger standards tonight. Essentially, America's existing air quality standards are not doing enough to protect our health. There are many communities that are still suffering from increased air pollution. Environment America released our Trouble in the Air report this year and found that particulate pollution in particular, which is also known as soot pollution, is widespread and exposes millions of Americans to potential health damage. 34 million people lived in areas with more than 100 days of elevated fine particulate pollution in 2018. So that's more than 3 months of the year where millions of people were affected by this type of air pollution. EPA's own scientists are recommending stronger annual standards for particulate matter pollution, but EPA's current proposal is ignoring the recommendations of scientists and keeping our standards the same as they've been for years. So thank you for joining with us and calling for stronger protections for our air. And I think we'll pass it now to Dr. Neelu Tummala, but I'm sure we have time for questions at some point. So Peter, I'll let it go back to you.
Great, thanks, Morgan. Yeah, now I'd like to introduce Dr. Neelu Tummala, who's a physician practicing at the George Washington University Hospital in the Division of Otolaryngology. She specializes in working with patients dealing with issues associated with breathing and with their ear, nose, and throat, ENT, and has a special interest in the effects of climate change on population health. Thank you, Dr. Tummala, for being with us.
Thank you, and thank you, Morgan, for giving us a little bit of background on some of the recent rollbacks. As hard as they are to hear, they're unfortunately our current reality, and is why we're all gathered here today. So my name is Neelu Tummala, and I'm a surgeon at George Washington Hospital, but I'm also a climate and health activist, and increasingly that's becoming a more important role for me. Thank you all for being here as a part of this virtual rally. Whether you know it or not, by joining this rally, you're advocating for the health of millions. Outdoor air pollution kills around 4.2 million people worldwide each year. As we think about our public health, COVID-19 has obviously been a tragedy that has taken over our health and our lives. It's sometimes hard to think about anything else, but we have to. For one, we all know that if we go back to life as normal, then air pollution levels will continue to rise and continue to affect the health of millions. And two, we know that even small increases in levels of fine particulate matter in the air correspond to an increase in COVID-19 deaths. There's a recent Harvard study and also data coming out of Italy showing that this is true. So it's all related. The air we breathe affects everyone and needs to be addressed as aggressively as possible. Air pollution affects asthma prevalence, it weakens the immune system, it affects heart health, it affects rates of premature birth. The health effects are diverse, and unfortunately they affect almost every part of our body. As a physician, I see a lot of patients in my clinic every day, and there are some stories that always just stick out in your memory. Particularly for me are the ones for whom clean air is not just a luxury, but it's a treatment. One gentleman in his 60s has been basically homebound for years. So long before COVID-19, but a few months that we all have been enduring it, he's been doing it for years. He lives in a neighborhood that has high levels of pollutants, and every time he goes out, even for a few minutes, just for a walk around the block, his breathing is aggravated, and he often finds himself in the ER needing a breathing treatment. Reports show that communities of color in the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic regions are exposed to 66% more air pollution than white residents. Black and Hispanic people are typically exposed to 50 to 60% more particulate matter than they produce through the consumption and daily activity. Clean air is an issue of equity. Unfortunately, breathing clean air is not a prescription that any physician can write. This is why we must all take action. A study published in the Journal of the American Medical Association last year showed that over a 20-year period of improved air quality, fewer children were diagnosed with asthma. This is a study coming out of Southern California. This outcome demonstrates that regulatory efforts to improve air quality have health benefits. In this particular case, fewer children were diagnosed with asthma. What you're all doing here, joining this rally, is incredibly important. You're advocating for the health of millions, and you're working towards a more promising future. Thank you all for being here, and thank you, Environment America, for putting this rally together.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Dr. Tumala. Yeah, I think that gives us a little bit of context for why this is such an essential issue, and why this kind of little-known, I'm hearing a little-known issue that the EPA is talking about is so important for millions of Americans and globally. It's such an important issue. So with that in mind, I'm going to pass it over to Catherine Frazier, who is a digital organizer with Environment Iowa, who will walk us through how we can help elevate our voices and make our voices heard on this essential issue. Catherine Frazier.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Peter. As Peter said, my name is Catherine Frazier. I work as a digital media organizer, for Environment Iowa. And I'm going to lead us through a social media storm real quick here. So Eric, if you don't mind pulling up that slide, perfect. So in a minute here, we're going to all participate in what we like to call a social media storm. So we're going to start posting on the platforms of our choosing about the particulate matter standard, using certain hashtags and making sure we tag the EPA. Since many of us are at home and we can't gather in person, having a ton of us post at the same time using the same hashtags and tags, it's a really great way to build a buzz around this issue and make sure that the EPA hears us loud and clear. We know that elected officials and regulators are active on social media. They monitor hashtags and mentions and tags actively, and they really do follow the online conversation. So we know that a social media storm like this is a really effective way to get their attention and advocate for clean air and climate action. So I'm now going to have y'all start navigating to your favorite social media platform. And I think on the next slide, we'll have some suggested hashtags and tweets. So I'll kind of walk through them one by one, starting with Twitter. But seeing on this page, you'll see kind of our suggested hashtags and the folks you should tag. And for Twitter, we have those 5 ones listed out, and you can see Eric's tweet from earlier that highlights some of the stats specifically about the PM standard, or the particulate matter standard. So you can copy his tweet or write something similar, but be sure to tag the EPA and use at least one hashtag. This is also a great opportunity to talk about your personal story and why you care about this issue. So feel free to add something personal and to share your own story and experience. We're also going to put a tweet from Environment America into the chat box in a second here. So if you'd rather retweet that and add a comment on top with a hashtag and a few sentences, feel free to do that too. And then on Instagram, we have posted a great photo that you'll see on the slide, the People Over Polluters photo. And you'll see our Twitter or our Instagram handle, Climate Defenders IA. IA is for Iowa. And so you can go to Instagram and add that post to your story and add the hashtag People Over Polluters and also tag the EPA there. And then finally, you can go to Facebook and post there as well. You can use Eric's tweet as a model, but for Facebook, posts are usually a little longer. So again, it's a great opportunity to talk about your experiences with clean air or climate change and talk about why you care about this issue. That's really often what's most effective. And once you've posted on one platform, feel free to go to another and post there too. And yeah, so everyone start going and posting. And I'm going to keep an eye on the hashtags we have here on Twitter and see how they're doing. We could even get them trending.
Is there something we can do if we don't use social media?
Yeah, I think a great thing to do is talk about these issues with your friends. And we're going to share a link in a minute here for how you can provide public comment. And that's another great way. If you don't have social media, you can directly send your comment to the EPA. So.
Great. Thanks, Catherine. Before we get to the public comments, I want to give everyone a chance to make some of those posts on social media. And then if you've already done that, or if you don't have social media, we have a few minutes here as well to ask our speakers a couple questions. So if you do have questions about clean air, about the current EPA standards, about the campaign in general, you can go into the chat and message myself, Peter Schneider. You can type in my name, and then I will direct those questions to our hosts. So a couple things going on. We got our tweet storm. Again, this is a really strong way. We have 58 folks here right now to help elevate our voices and show that even though we're social distancing and we're all over the country, we're still joining together and joining this movement and showing support that this is really an essential issue.
And I just put those two links in the chat so you can see the Environment America tweet that you can retweet with a hashtag, and then the Instagram post to add to your story. And when you're done, feel free to share your post with friends and family and have them share it as well too.
And then, Catherine, can you just repost what the hashtags are to use in the chat? I got a question about that.
Yeah, sounds good. I'll put some in here right now.
I know it's clean air and people over polluters.
Yes, exactly. People over polluters, believe in science, clean air. We're also using public health. It's a great one. And if you're talking about the hearing, we've been using PM hearing, standing for particulate matter. And the evergreen one is Act on Climate.
Act on Climate. Yeah, just with a few more minutes here, I'd love to ask Morgan and Dr. Tumala about kind of specifics of kind of particulate matter. What are some ways that we can, when we envision a future where there's better clean air, what does that future kind of look like? What are some things that we're pushing for and striving for?
Well, in my work on particulate matter pollution, so one of the main sources is from the tailpipes of our cars. And then another big source is wildfires. So when you have extended wildfire season where there's drier conditions, drought can often lead to more frequent and intense wildfires. And that can really affect the communities that are living in those places. And so everything that we do to fight climate change helps to ensure that we're not seeing a future with more of those conditions that could lead to wildfires. So anything that we can do to get more clean energy online and reduce the pollution that's threatening our climate can help us to achieve clean air. And then some of the things that have a direct impact on the communities are things like our cars and traffic. So that's some of the sources and places that I think about it a lot. Milo, I don't know if you have anything to add.
Sorry. Yeah, I mean, I think sort of like I said, that particulate matter affects our health in so many different ways. So no matter what we do in terms of decreasing the air pollution, whether it's fine particulate matter or not, is only going to improve health. So whether we're talking about, with the mercury and air toxic standards, whether it's, lung cancer, premature birth rates, cardiovascular disease, asthma incidence, any way that we're able to decrease the levels and have, our phone telling us that the level of air pollution is unsafe for certain populations, it's just going to be helpful. There's not something specific, and that's part of the problem with air pollution and heat, like in general, both of those, is that they affect multiple parts of our bodies, and there's multiple mechanisms and the pathology in terms of how it affects one part of your body, which leads to another thing, which then causes certain health outcome. Is pretty diverse and can become somewhat complex, but there's always sort of that root cause that is contributing to the issue. So, yeah.
Thank you. And I'm just going to cut in here. I'm seeing a lot of great tweets using our hashtags. Thanks, Renee. Jessica, who's on, just added a great photo of her paper that we're going to hold up later. Noah, this is great. Cool. If you want to search a hashtag on Twitter, you can and see other people's tweets.
I think we have time for one or two more questions. This next one is for Dr. Tummala. We have a poll, social media storm poll. Got a lot of things going on.
Yeah, so once you're done posting, make sure to click on where you posted.
Awesome. While we're doing that, Dr. Tummala, there's a question for you. If you've seen respiratory issues increase over the last decade or so, kind of as a result of air pollution, or kind of general trends that you've seen in patients?
Yeah, so I have, so a lot of the sort of information that we get, or the data that we talk about, is based off of studies. So, as an ENT, one of the main things that I see in terms of that I've noticed sort of a progression is allergy seasons. And so from that, we know that allergy seasons are starting earlier and ending later. And a big part of that is the freeze-free season, meaning that the season where there's no freezing of plants, which produce the pollen, is shorter. And so people have allergy symptoms longer. But in terms of actually looking at specific health issues secondary to respiratory or increased air pollution, you kind of have to look at long-term trends, which is what studies tend to look at versus seeing a specific patient in clinic. But interestingly, when you talk to patients, you can kind of talk about, especially your older patients, what they're experiencing now versus what they experienced 20 or 30 years ago. But really, I think the study that I mentioned coming out of Southern California, where they looked at a 20-year trend in terms of the number of kids that developed asthma and then how bad their asthma symptoms were, is a pretty clear-cut way to evaluate what happens. And in that case, it was cleaner air, and they noticed that less kids had asthma, but to sort of see those long-term trends. Because even, with what's going on now with COVID-19, obviously we have cleaner air right now for the month of, March and April and May, but how much is that going to affect people's health? Immediately can potentially affect, maybe some patients in terms of inflammatory disease, but it's going to be sort of the chronic long-term increase in air pollution levels that's really going to have the intended effects that we want on our health in a sort of like in a global measure.
Great.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing we often forget to talk about is that our air is a lot cleaner than it used to be 20, 30, or 40 years ago. You know, the pictures of major cities like Los Angeles and New York a long time ago, the air was gray and covered with a brown cloud of smog, and it's definitely improved a lot. And part of that is thanks to standards like the National Ambient Air Quality Standards that are under the Clean Air Act, which is exactly what we're fighting for, is to keep those standards continually stronger so that we continue improving our clean air year over year and don't just hold our progress stagnant.
Thank you. I got one question just about the social media post, Catherine, if there are public figures in particular that we should be tagging in our posts. I know the EPA, head of the EPA is a good one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great question. You can also tag EPA Administrator Wheeler, and I'll put his tag or his handle in the chat. And this is for Twitter mainly. He's not on Instagram, I don't think.
Great.
He does have a Facebook page, though.
Awesome. All right. I think with that, everyone keep on posting, doing an awesome job. It's really fun to look at the polls and just see the numbers kind of continuing every second. Catherine just put those tags for EPA Wheeler in the chat. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Julie Johnson, who is a field organizer with Environment Iowa, and who will show us how to submit public comments to the EPA and to further voice all of our concerns with our current standards and our support for strengthening them.
Great, thank you, Peter. If you could actually share that slide too, that would be awesome. So like he said, my name is Julie Johnson. I am a organizer with Environment Iowa, working in District 4, in Congressional District 4. And I'm just going to talk a little bit about public comments, and then I'll explain specifically how you guys can comment right now. So because the EPA is legally required to read and consider every single unique comment that we submit, a high quantity and a high quality of comments can really get the attention of our elected officials and shake up the whole system. And so submitting a public comment is a quick and effective way as a constituent to communicate directly with the government and actually have it recorded into the system. This really helps keep the system in check and really let the EPA know what we want and why we want it to be a stricter regulation with air quality in this situation. So it's a pretty simple way to really access the government in a really direct and personal way is if you can personalize your comment. So right now we're going to take a minute here and do that as a group. So how to submit the comment for this SUT hearing. On here, there's a website for each location. So if you're in Iowa, you can go to that one. And I actually am just sending it into the chat right now, so you can just click the link. If you're not in either of these states, no worries, you can go to either, and you'll actually have the opportunity to specify your location. And after that, you add your information, and then you'll see pretty clearly that there's already a pre-entered comment. And the best way to do that is to edit it and personalize it so that it's not just the same comment again and again. Like I said before, legally they have to review each comment that is unique. And so it's important to make it unique in order to just get more and more attention put on the issue. And so at a minimum, make sure to just submit the comment, but if you're willing, it'd be great if you can personalize it with something that's important to you. And then you just go ahead and submit it, and it's really that simple. And so right now, we're just gonna take 4 or 5 minutes for everyone to submit public comments. If you have already submitted a comment, or you finish early and you find that you have a couple minutes here in the meantime on your hands, please take this extra minute or two and copy those links from the chat and text or email it to friends or family or other people in your life that would be willing to also submit a comment. Again, the more unique comments we get submitted today, the better. And right now, as a, this being a rally, like right now is the time to do it. So with that, I will kind of release it into a free space here, just taking a couple minutes to submit those comments.
Thanks, Julie. Yeah, I think, like Julie was saying, even just sending it to 5 folks, if everyone sends it to, everyone here sends the comment to 5 people and they all submit it, that's over 250 comments. And then they all send it to a few more folks, you know, soon enough we get to over 1,000 and it just kind of snowballs and the support keeps growing. So a quick text, a quick phone call, a quick email to friends or family really goes a long way here. And then as we're posting those comments, just one last reminder, in a second, we're gonna take a quick group photo. So everyone who has made a really great sign that says #clean air or I want clean air, people over polluters, anything of that sort, we're gonna hold them up in just a minute. If you haven't made one again, grab a piece of paper, grab a pen, grab a marker, and mark that down. And we'll do that in just about 30 seconds here. And then also a reminder, if your video is currently turned off and you have a sign you're like to participate in, there is a little button at the bottom that you can press to turn on your video. And it's that simple. So I'm seeing a lot of signs showing up on the screen here, a lot of videos turning on. Awesome, awesome, awesome. So now we're gonna do something where we're gonna hold up our signs and then we're just gonna kind of hold it for about like 15 seconds and smile a little awkwardly for that long as Catherine and I kind of take a screenshot of all the grid. So on the count of 3, we're gonna smile and hold our signs for about 10 seconds. 1, 2, 3. Doing great, everyone. Keep it up. All right. One more grid. There's so many of you. All right. I think we got it. Thank you so much, everyone. That is the bulk of what we're gathering here tonight to do. You guys were all really awesome. A lot of different actions that we were able to do. I don't know if you have any of the numbers, Catherine, to share on posts or anything like that. But social media, incredible presence that our elected officials, everyone in the EPA will be able to hear. We have public comments, again, continuing to share those with friends and family, sharing the link to post a comment on your social media. And then this group picture that we just took as well is another great way to just kind of visualize just how many people are really pushing for stronger standards on clean air. So thank you all for joining us this evening, and thank you to our speakers, Morgan Folger and Dr. Tumala, for providing us a little bit more expertise and knowledge on what this hearing means. Catherine, yeah, did you have